We've gone through the recreational style road bike, which is for someone that's getting into road cycling or maybe their first road bike. We looked at the sport level bike, which is getting a little bit more performance orientated, certainly for someone that's riding a little bit more regularly and longer distances. Now we're going to look at the performance level road bike, which obviously is the top level, aimed solely at being the best performing type of bike that it can be, and certainly aimed at someone that's riding very regularly, whether they're competing or not, but certainly someone that's doing a lot of riding, looking to get the most out of their bike and their riding. Remembering some of the differences we looked at with the recreational and sport level road bike, the first thing that stands out with this one is the saddle to handlebar height difference. So you can see straight away that the handlebars are much lower on the front of the bike on this particular style. Obviously, again, they are adjustable, both handlebar and saddle height, but the standard position is much more aggressive, which is again getting that cyclist down into a much lower, much more aggressive position, which certainly helps with aerodynamics, certainly helps with ergonomics to get more power through the pedalling stroke. So having that position obviously aids performance straight away. The bike will become longer in the top tube length of the bike, which again gives a little bit more room to get down lower in the front of the bike. And the wheelbase, you'll certainly note that this rear wheel is slammed right in as far as it can come into the back of the bike. And the idea of having that wheeling closer is that the shorter the length of the rear end of the bike, the better it accelerates because it's stiffer, less material there for it to flex. So it obviously stiffens the bike up significantly, but also the handling. So on a bike like this, it's razor sharp. It's able to handle high speed cornering, with 100% confidence for the cyclist. So for someone new to road cycling, they might be a bit daunted by that because of the fact that it is very fast. And a common question we might get is that a bike has a bit of nervousness at speed. Well, that's just probably getting used to that style of bike because it is really aimed at that performance level. So much so that the fork on this particular bike is actually dead straight. On some of the low level bikes, the fork is curved to then sort of add a little bit more slowness to the front end of the steering of the bike. This one, it's not about that, it's about slamming that fork dead straight to make sure that the steering is really fast and really stable, no matter the speed. The other thing you'll notice about the frame on this particular bike, so we've covered off the geometry and it's significantly different, but looking at the frame shape, now this one is very different in its shape, and this because this one goes to being a carbon fibre frame. So we talked about the benefits before of a carbon fibre fork on lower spec bikes, where it softens the ride through dampening a lot of the road shock and vibration out of the bike. And so if you think about the whole frame now is actually carbon fibre. Carbon fibre is incredibly desirable as a bicycle frame material because of the fact it can be handmade to get the most out of the frame for the rider. So the benefit of a carbon fibre frame firstly is incredibly light. A bike like this will be sort of around 7 kilos in weight, as opposed to maybe 9 kilos for a sport level bike and maybe about 12 kilos for a recreational bike. So the bike, obviously being much lighter, will perform much better and climb those hills a lot easier. The stiffness of the frame is also a lot different, so it's a lot higher, and obviously the stiffer the frame is, the more power is transmitted into the pedals through into the bike to make sure that you're smashing along the road as fast as you can. So you can see here the tube profiles of the bike in the front triangle, particularly the bottom section of the bike, very, very oversized, right down to the chain stays here along where the chain runs. And the idea of having the big down section on the bottom half of the bike is that that's where a lot of the stress of the cyclist pedaling and driving through the bike goes on. So the idea to make that big and oversized obviously stiffens that area up to make sure the bike's as efficient as it can be. Up top though, the bike's a little bit more defined, a little bit lighter in its tube profile, a little bit skinnier, and also with some curvature. And those curves add a little bit of compliance, so it softens the ride up a little bit more. So whilst the bottom of the bike makes sure that the frame is very, very stiff and very fast, the top of the bike is designed to be a little bit more forgiving, so it softens that ride up a little bit. So again, for someone that's riding 3, 4, 5 hours out on the road, they're not having to fight the bike for that whole time, so they can perform better for longer and get most out of their cycling. So really, to cover off the frame, that's probably the main benefits. To look at a carbon fibre frame, you probably really want to get up close and have a look at some of the detail that does go into the frame. Differences too, you can see that on some of the tubes, like the seat tube here and the seat post, even the fork too, there's a slight aerodynamic shape to those tubing to try and cut through the wind with as much efficiency as possible, so again translating to better performance for the rider. So a very big difference from where we've been in those lower level bikes to this type of bike in terms of performance capability. Looking at other components, obviously the gearing, you step up in the level of gears depending on how much riding the consumer's doing, but obviously you go into the bigger size front chainring. So we talked before, the recreational bike has 3 front chainrings, triple front chainrings, which are quite recreational focused. The sport level bikes typically have smaller front chainrings, which only 2 of them, but smaller in size to offer some assistance in some of the hilly terrain and the like. Whereas with this one, again, it's all about speed and performance. So we're going to the bigger size front chainring being 53, the smaller one is a 39. And then on the rear here, where we've got 10 rear cogs, so quite a significant range of gearing, the gearing again is quite tight. So again, all about speed, all about performance in the gearing. To look at some of the other features of the bike, we can look at the wheels. And you can see here that this wheel, unlike some of the other wheels we looked at earlier, is a little bit deeper in its profile. So the benefit of that is that again it adds a little bit more aerodynamics to the bike. So if the wheel, while it's spinning, is a little bit more aerodynamic, it's going to help cut through the wind that little bit better and help the rider attain a much higher average speed. So looking at the bike in all, we've noticed the weight, we've noticed the stiffness, we've noticed the performance, we've noticed the gearing. We notice the wheels, and again, it's really aimed at being a bike that, to ride a lot, to look at competing, whether it's in triathlon or on the road, it's going to get the most out of, give the rider the most out of their cycling and perform at that top level. So we've gone through each of the different styles of road bikes today and obviously helped explain from a customer's perspective who would be buying the bike and what the advantages of each of the different styles are for them in their riding. So I guess today, just to reaffirm, we looked at the recreational road bike. It's the entry-level road bike, quite comfortable, quite relaxed in its riding, but still a much faster bike than a hybrid or a flat bar, and for someone that's doing more road cycling, a great way to get into it. We looked at the sport level bike, which obviously takes a lot from the recreational bike and adds a lot more performance to it. So it's a lighter, faster bike, a little bit more committed in its riding position, but certainly a bike that's going to be able to do a lot of good riding and very, very, very popular level of bike for us. And then we looked at also the performance of a bike here, which is obviously the top of the range in terms of performance. Every aspect of the bike has been designed to get the most out of the bike and ensure that the rider and the bike can perform at their highest level. So certainly aimed at someone that rides a lot more or looking for someone to get a lot more out of their riding. So that's it, guys. I hope that gives you some great understanding of the different types of road bikes we stock here in the store, and good luck with that on the sales floor.